jealousy can morph from harmless to toxic, destroying our lives and the lives of people we love. To illustrate this point, I want to talk about the Penthouse. That's right. Let's get into it. Today, we're talking about a high school rivalry that spiraled, complete with throat slashing, husband stealing, and murder, and what these families could have done to escape their fates. It all started with two high school girls, both dreaming of becoming a famous opera singer. But there was only one trophy, and the prize was prestige and a scholarship to the best university in the country. On one side, we have Sejin. She has an awful lot of money, but she also has an awful father. His love is entirely conditional, and he makes this clear. She must be perfect, and she is not allowed to be anything but better than everyone else. She obviously doesn't need the scholarship, but her parents want the prestige. On the other side, we have Yoon-hee. She's working class. Her parents are not very involved in her life, but she needs this money. She also has a once-in-a-generation amazing voice. In a healthy society, Yoon-hee would get the scholarship and Sejin would go to a fancy college. But the system they live in demands that only one person, or one type of person, can win. So despite Yoon-hee out-singing Sejin again, Sejin's dad bribes the judges, and she gets the trophy. Yoon-hee is furious. Yet again, Sejin's parents have purchased a trophy using their wealth and privilege. She confronts Sejin and informs her that everyone knows her dad bribed the judges. Sejin is humiliated. She knows that she's not the best, but she still worked really hard, and it's not fair that no matter what she does, it's never good enough to actually beat Yoon-hee. She also thinks it's pretty rude for Yoon-hee to say that to her face instead of just talking behind her back like a normal person. So she shuts Yoon-hee up the best way she knows how. She lifts up the trophy and slashes Yoon-hee's throat, deep enough to damage her vocal cords. Her final act is to reach down to Yoon-hee, rub her fingers across Yoon-hee's bleeding throat, and smear that blood across her own neck and face. She then fake cries to the teachers, and her family uses their wealth and privilege to orchestrate a massive cover-up. They blame Yoon-hee for her own injuries, get her disqualified from the competition, and then get her expelled from school, robbing her of her voice, a high school diploma, and a chance at an easier life in one fell swoop. They shrug off the pain they have caused, and Yoon-hee is left literally bleeding on the floor all alone. Fast forward 25 years. Sejin is the queen bee. She's married to a very wealthy doctor. She's still rich. She wears cool clothes. She's a famous opera singer, and she's a director of an elite art school. Yoon-hee, on the other hand, is a single mother living paycheck to paycheck and working odd jobs to make ends meet. By all accounts, Sejin won the war. But the pattern of envy and insecurity that should have died when Sejin took everything from Yoon-hee was simply passed down to their daughters. Because those feelings never really disappear. They have to go somewhere. Sejin has the same morals as her father. She maliciously gossips, she bullies, and she removes anyone who stands in her daughter's way, all while berating her daughter for not actually being the best. On the other side of town, Yoon-hee's daughter has inherited her mother's voice, and she secretly auditions for the elite art school. But she faces the same systemic barriers as her mother. The school accepts her because her talent adds to their prestige, but they will never acknowledge that she's the best, because that would disrupt the elitist classist system they must maintain. Sejin had largely forgotten or buried what she did in high school, but the moment Yoon-hee appears, that facade cracks, and Sejin makes the same mistakes her parents made, telling her daughter that she must be Yoon-hee's daughter no matter what. And so the cycle continues. Sejin's daughter fears that Yoon-hee's daughter will take her crush and the #1 spot in school. And she lets those fears morph into jealousy that only subside after she bullies. However, Yoon-hee vows that she won't let her daughter be bullied by the spawn of her tormentor. Let's pause. Imagine this is you. At this point in the story, would you walk away or would you stay and fight back? Tell me in the comments. Unfortunately, Yoon-hee's pledge to prevent anyone from bullying her daughter sets her on a dark path. She decides that the only way to protect her daughter is to get the same wealth and power that Sejin has. She will do anything. She starts by stealing back the man who Sejin stole many years ago, but soon enough, she's undermining and plotting against people who have done nothing to her. She even starts to look at other talented, innocent students as threats to her daughter. One night, Yoonhee is drunk and alone. She sees a girl who reminds her of herself in high school. And as she talks with this girl, she realizes that this girl goes to the same school as her daughter and is also an opera singer. And the more this girl talks, the more Yoonhee can't help but feel jealousy and grief for the life that was taken from her. She's screaming and running. Then and suddenly that young girl is falling and she will never sing again. Yoonhee is shocked because she's not like Sejin. She would never hurt someone just because she's jealous of them. That's not who she is. But that's the thing about toxic jealousy. It doesn't care if you've previously been a perpetrator or a victim. We can all become consumed with the idea that we can't let anyone take something or someone from us. And suddenly, someone who has been wounded by others is no longer trying to heal themselves, but instead trying to make other people bleed the same way they do. But Yoonhee isn't ready to acknowledge that truth or confess to this crime. So she pushes it down and stays on her path. Time passes, and the mother's war becomes a daughter's war. Just like the generation before them, the girls are not conscious enough to realize that they should actually be frustrated with the society and with families that pit them against each other. They fight about everything: friends, crushes, and now the trophy at the same opera competition that changed everything for their mothers. Except this time, there's a crowd and social media exists. So to avoid negative attention to the school, whoever wins actually has to be the best. Sejin's daughter tries to sabotage Yoonhee's daughter, but it doesn't work, and she sings flawlessly. Knowing Yoonhee's daughter delivered a perfect performance is almost too much to bear. When it's her turn to perform, the pressure gets to her and her voice cracks. She walks off stage knowing that not only will she not be first, she probably won't even place. It's over. She runs into the hallway to catch her breath, but she sees the boy she likes talking to Yoonhee's daughter and telling her she's amazing. This is the final straw, and she snaps. She charges towards Yoonhee's daughter and crashes through the trophy case. Instead of using that as a sign to calm down, she simply puts her hands through broken glass, grabs the trophy, chases Yoonhee's daughter through the school, and then pushes her down a massive flight of stairs. She only stops screaming when she notices that Yoonhee's daughter isn't moving. Unlike her mother, Sejin's daughter feels remorse and wants to confess, but Sejin prevents her from doing so. She doesn't want the family's reputation to be ruined, and she is not ready to accept the role she played in turning her own daughter into an insecure, jealous shell of a person who can only be happy when she feels she is better than someone else. As a result, her daughter goes on a downward spiral. During this downward spiral, she ends up passed out in the back of a car, dangerously close to the edge of a cliff. By this point, Yoonhee has come to grips with what she did to that girl, and now she has empathy for the mental state that Sejin must constantly live in. So when she sees an opportunity to pay it forward and help, she takes it. But Yoonhee made a critical mistake that I think we all make. She assumed that just because she's worked on herself, that everyone around her is working on themselves too. But Sejin had not done the inner work to deal with her jealousy. And as the two former rivals work together, Sejin is suddenly filled with shame and insecurity around her parenting. She thinks of all the times she felt less than because of Yoonhee. And suddenly, she finds herself walking to the front of the car while Yoonhee is still behind it, changing the gears of the car and starting to push. Yoonhee screams, but Sejin keeps pushing. She pushes even harder, and eventually the car, along with Yoonhee, falls off the cliff and into the sea. Unlike her daughter, Sejin feels no remorse for this. Instead, she just feels a twisted liberation, believing she has finally removed the source of her unhappiness in life. But of course, as we all know, that's not how insecurities work. Sure, the rivalry was over, but as expected, Sejin was still unhappy and empty. Sejin's daughter looks around at all of the misery in her family and friends, and she makes the most rebellious choice a woman dealing with insecure, jealous people can make. She opts out. She walks away from it all, but not before righting a wrong. She testifies against her mother in court, and she then damages her own throat, just like Sejin did to Yoonhee all those years ago. She surrenders her pride and apologizes to Yoonhee's daughter for everything she did, and the two women commit to finding a healthier way to feel happiness. Both young women live a less lavish and privileged life than their mothers envisioned for them, but they are emotionally healthy and happy, and that's the most important thing. Just like the women in today's breakdown, we might think we got the last laugh because we finally embarrassed or hurt someone we were jealous of. But be careful. Eventually, those toxic emotions will control you, and you won't just end up destroying your enemies, you'll destroy yourself. I consider this a tragedy. While we can't ignore Sejin's immense power and wealth, ultimately, she was also a victim of her father and this society's need to pit people against each other. Here are the red flags I identified. Don't forget to put yours in the comments. Toxic jealousy red flag number 1. You stop trying to win and start trying to make them lose. When Sejin realized that she was feeling happiness at the prospect of Yoonhee's suffering, this meant her jealousy was no longer just about the trophy or the scholarship. It was about hurting Yoonhee, and she should have stepped back. Red flag number 2. Your jealousy starts affecting the people around you. We may find ourselves planting seeds of doubt or chaos between that person and others, effectively ruining their relationships because we need them to lose. There was a small moment where Sejin and Yoonhee's daughters could have been friends, but Sejin planted so many terrible seeds of doubt and insecurity in her daughter's ears, encouraging her to make the most negative assumptions about Yoonhee's daughter that her daughter really didn't stand a chance. And the final red flag is that you see the alternative path, but you choose not to take it. Sejin ran past every single breaking point because walking away would have meant admitting that the game wasn't worth playing. And toxic jealousy can't do that because it would mean reckoning with things inside of us that sometimes we just aren't ready to see. If you liked this or I got you thinking, hit subscribe and give me a thumbs up and tell me in the comments, am I wrong? Should we always walk away from toxic jealousy? Or should we stay and try to fight? Talk to you later. Bye.